Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Finding Financial Fitness Show. I'm your host, Nino Gonzalez, joined again by Pei, my co-host. Pei, how you doing?
Hey. It's been a while since we recorded an episode, but we actually just saw each other, so
I thought you were gonna say it's been a while since I've seen you. I'm like, man, 24 hours is too long.
24 hours is too long.
We had the fortunate time to be able to go to Dallas. We've talked on this show about different investment opportunities that we've been a part of, and one of the ones that we've kind of has been, like, I would say, our central focus for 2024, be it intentionally or not, has been private money lending and funding fix and flip projects, which has been a lot of fun. And being going from 2023 for me personally, it was a lot of, like, I think you coined the term black box investing, where you're kind of just giving money to a fund or giving money to a person and hoping for the best, basically. And as we very well learned and are currently learning, that's not always the safest thing. And there's an element of control and liquidity that if something were to go wrong with the investment, that's it. If you're just left holding a piece of paper, sure, there's legal routes you can take, but ultimately you're just kind of just left holding that piece of paper. And what was cool with being able to see the homes that we're funding is it's a tangible thing. Not to say that things can't go wrong, because of course they can, but your risk and your risk is lower and your control is higher. So I always love going out there to see some of the homes that we've have funded. And obviously it's great to hang out with you and family friends that are able to come along, which was kind of the reason on this topic, kind of where we wanted to come from. I think you've seen, you and I have traveled a couple times together now, just on different business trips. You see how I travel, and I made a comment to Yesenia the other day when we were on our trip. I'm like, I wonder if people think we're crazy, because to us it's so normal. And what I'm referencing is when we travel, be it by plane, be it by car, we're taking our meals, right? You'll see my containers, you'll see, if you open the fridge, you'll see all these different foods that I have. And it's not as meal prep stringent in the sense that everything is measured out right away, but I'll take like my chicken, I'll take my beef, I'll take my rice, I'll take my potatoes, and then when I'm ready to eat, I'll kind of assemble it and weigh it out. But to me, I've been doing this for the better part of 10 years, 15 years almost now. And it's just so normal. And so I remember you made the comment of, and I just kind of want to get your opinion on what that's like to be able to
Yeah,
see.
it's actually very eye-opening. The couple times that we've traveled with you and seeing you in action, and I've never seen it personally, to be honest. I've never seen it like that, right?
Mhm.
Because when we travel, the tendency is to go out and eat, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're um, not really able to cook yourself, right? Especially if you're staying at hotels.
Mhm.
But with the popularity of Airbnb nowadays and family travel, and you guys love to travel with your dogs, so you're essentially taking your home with you. You're a
Yeah,
nomad
sure.
in a different way. So I see that you guys take full advantage of the kitchen amenities that's offered. And even I think we had stayed at a couple places where it's just kind of limited kitchenette type situation where you
Mhm.
can cook a full meal. But
Mhm.
you guys are definitely preppers in a not preppers as in like a end of the
Doomsday.
world sense, but prepper as in planners. I guess that's a better word. That you
Yeah.
are preparing your meals and you still go out. Like we went
Mhm.
out a couple
Yeah.
times, but you don't go out every single meal.
Right.
And when there's an opportunity to eat healthy and stay on track, I see that you guys like have your portions set, and um, that's just impressed me because I think that's how you're able to travel so much and still stay on track, right?
Yeah.
Like already the schedule is crazy. It's an interruption to your normal routine, but at least if there's one element that you can control, that seems to have worked out really well for you. So that's why I asked you that question when we were together. Like, so what is it like to do all this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we in previous episode we talked about kind of eating healthier, and the myth in my mind for all these years has always been like, if you want to eat healthy, you have to eat all like organic. And then when you think about organic food, it automatically translates into a higher food bill. right? So that's why I raised the question, like, how do you guys do this? Like, to what extent do you meal prep? Because I've tried it, but I tend to go then say, I said like hey, I want a meal prep. Then I go to Costco, I buy $500 worth of, organic grocery, and then I set it on the table, and then I end up throwing half of that food away. And I don't think that I'm the only one out there, right? Because
Mm.
I'm lured by you know, uh, the videos out there about 5-minute meal preps, and it's not always what it really is. So I
Mhm.
wanted to come to the expert and ask that.
No, it's funny, and that's of course what we'll talk about today. Two things that I wanted to focus on was because I know on one of our previous episodes we discussed, and I kind of left a cliffhanger about discussing healthy eating versus kind of home cooking, and then versus eating out, or sorry, healthy eating, cooking at home, but also healthy eating when you're out and about. And one of the common, I would say, misconceptions is that it's more expensive to cook at home than it is to go eat out. And it's funny because the whole meal prep component of how you see me eating, like I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this better part of 10-15 years now. And it started off because of wanting to save money, actually. Initially I was competing as a bodybuilder, and I was very OCD about my meals, to the point where what you see now is me being flexible and being able to just have a balance between it. That was not me. I'm talking about meal timing, and I was the other end of the spectrum from what most people are. But I did it initially because of cost. And it's taken a lot of time for me now to say, okay, well, I have the means, let me go enjoy and try different foods. But even then, when I'm eating out, I'm still choosing healthier options. It's that we talk a lot about scarcity versus abundance mindset. And I remember there's this concept in the bodybuilding and just the fitness world of a cheat meal, right? And a cheat meal is, or a cheat day, where you eat healthy 6.5 days of the week, and then you have one meal where you can splurge. And I will remember, long as I can remember, going in and out, California kid here, getting 4x4s, so 4 patties and 4 slices of cheese, or downing a whole pizza and thinking, well, this is healthy, right? I'm eating my healthy 6.5 meals. Then the seventh day, I'm just killing it. And that kind of leads to, if you're not careful, obsessive eating, binge eating, disordered eating. And that's also a unhealthy end of the spectrum, right? We've talked about before about the different spectrums when it comes to eating healthy. And so for me, first and foremost, it started off with cost. I wanted to save money. And I knew that if I can go to Costco, or I can go to HEB here in Texas, whatever grocery store you want, and buy things in bulk, I did the cost average per meal. And especially now, recording this in 2024 with prices of inflation, you are lucky to go out to eat at a good, decent quality restaurant for under $15, right? I mean, that's just
Mhm.
the standard. I mean, getting a decent chicken dish, if you will, or salad, you're not getting anything under $15. And I can tell you right now, the average cost of cooking a meal at home, be it, I eat yogurt and some oatmeal, which you've seen me eat, chicken and rice, potatoes, salmon. The average cost of those meals are going to be on the low end, maybe $2. On the high end, if I'm eating like salmon or grass-fed ground beef, it might be $5-6 per serving, but that's well below. And for the amount of, I eat maybe 4 or 5 meals a day, roughly 4 meals, you factor that in. If I'm eating out every 4 meals, then that really does add up. But you did bring up a very good point, in that most people, when they think of meal prepping, they think of going to the store once a month, buying bulk everything, and that's going to last them. They'll meal prep, but then you end up wasting so much money on fresh produce that you can't finish in the time allotted before the food goes bad, right? And then you've just thrown out food. And in that case, well, sure, it is going to be more expensive. So that's, I think, part of the way when we're talking about meal prep today, that we'll be able to debunk that myth of healthy eating versus at healthy eating at home versus eating out and about, and how some do's and don'ts when it comes to meal prep.
And I think one of the benefit that I see, observe when a couple times that we've been together, I see that when you do meal prep, I think just by the fact of kind of portion, like the controlling of that portion, it helps, right? Because if you're just cooking a large meal, I think the traditional way of meal prep,
Mm.
this is how I grew up, right? Boomer story. The meal prep back in my day is that you cook a large dinner, right? And then the leftover gets separated into containers next day for lunch, for the family. So that, I guess, I've been doing it in a very unhealthy way, which is, overcook. Like, I have a family of three, but when we cook pasta, I don't know how to cook just for this meal. I end up with a whole bat of like pasta for a family of 12, right? And then I end up having to divvy that up. First of all, when there's so much food, then that first meal that we do,
Yep.
we're overeating by
Yep.
default. There's so much food, so you're like, okay, let's eat it, most of it right now. And then whatever's left over gets divvied up into like, okay, lunch, or next day's dinner or whatever, right? And then you try to change it, supplement it with different veggies and
Mhm.
try to change it up. But that's, I don't think, an ideal way of meal prepping. I get sick of the same food. And
Mhm.
I don't think I'm the only one that have that same feeling, right? After the second or third meal of the same thing, you're just like, okay, I'm done. Let's go
Right.
out to eat.
Right. Right. For
So
sure.
I'm trying to break this habit, right? And I see how you guys do it. It's not what I expected. It's almost like you have certain things pre-cooked, and then it's almost like a Lego. You guys then put it, or a puzzle, then you guys put it together. And then it seems like then by doing that combination method, you can have different meals, but with the same ingredients.
Yep.
So I want you to
Yep.
walk me through how to do that more effectively, efficiently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's I've never used that. I've never heard that analogy of like Lego pieces, but in essence, that is what it is. It's kind of like we went to a Mediterranean place the other day, right, for lunch, and it was a buffet style setting, but you kind of pick your meat, you pick your sides, right, and that's to an extent what I try to have. Now, granted, I will say I am totally fine with eating the same food every day at every meal. If in fact I actually prefer that because I know what's going into my body, I know the amounts, I know the portions, and I know the taste. And that's something I wanted to bring up here was oftentimes when people think of meal prep, they think that, oh, I'm eating chicken and rice and it's plain chicken and it's plain rice. If you're eating that, I don't want to eat that because there are times where I might be in a hotel that I might have my little stove with me that I can plug in, but the rice doesn't come out the same as it is when I cook it at home. And therefore it's not as good. And then I'm like, I really don't want to eat this. And I'm very tempted. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I will go to a Chipotle. I will go to a more fast food, healthy place to get a chicken and rice because it has more seasonings. So I try to make the meals that I prep as tasty as possible. You mentioned also kind of a large meal with the OG meal prepping, if you will, when it comes to making a large meal. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So tip number one here when it comes to making a large meal, because for people who have families, there's still the tradition of making kind of a dinner for the family where the family can eat together. And there's plenty of studies showing the both positive mental health effects on children that have meals and specifically dinners with their families at night versus those that don't. So I would encourage people to have meals together and also encourage parents to cook up that dinner with their kids. So obviously if you're meal prepping ahead of time and your kids are in school, then you're not going to be doing that with them. I think the best way to develop healthy eating behaviors early on is to get kids involved. So one of the easiest way to do that is when the kid gets home from school, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, you start prepping dinner together. Maybe the kid can help cutting up some basic things, not using a knife or just organizing, hey, can you get me the potatoes, depending on the age, of course. But then you get them involved. And with that, when you make the meal for dinner, you preset aside the portions, meaning you'll have one big pot of pasta, let's say. But right when the pasta's done, you portion it out onto the plate. So obviously, mom, dad, and it's going to have a little bigger of a portion than the child will. Put that on the plates, and then you put the leftovers away. Put them right in the freezer, because then by the time you're done eating, 20, 30 minutes, because you're talking while you're eating, then if let's say you were hungry and you wanted to go back, well, the food's semi-cold already, and you're like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. It's the ease of convenience. It's like going to a buffet. The ease of just getting back up. Like I struggle at buffets because of that. It's the ease of the convenience. So I think there's nothing wrong with starting with large meal leftovers. So if you're going to plan to cook one meal, if you're just starting out and I would say that we talked about this, the traditional person who goes to work, gets up in the morning, drops the kids off at school, goes to work, and then comes home. Most of the time, it's a quick grab and go breakfast, be it a donut, something sweet, something that's very easy to eat at home, in the car, or at work. Lunch, most people will go out to eat for lunch. They'll go to the closest place to their work, or they might Uber Eats it. And then dinner's when, if someone's going to start eating healthy, that's the easiest place to start. Granted, that's where the limited amount of energy is, right? Because the last thing you want to do after work is spend time cooking. But again, I want to emphasize the importance of prioritizing your health, which is what we talk about on this show. So I think that's the easiest place to start, is start with large meal leftovers. And on a Sunday, before you're going back, or before you do your grocery shopping, plan out almost recipes of what you want to have. And I'm not, when I say recipes, people think of like assembling a whole, Chef Ramsay type of dish. Like, no, just think about what you want your foods to be. And you could do this two ways. You can say, okay, this week, Monday, we're like almost like a school lunch, right? You know how they have it listed for 2 weeks in advance, cafeteria style, right? You could do that, because then it holds you accountable. And when you go to the grocery store, you're buying the items just for that. If you go to the grocery store and you kind of wing it when you're going, chances are you're going to add things to your cart that you did not want to have. And next thing you know, on a Tuesday night, you have a bag of Doritos just sitting there and you're like, nah, this is tempting. All right. So plan ahead.
They always put ice cream right by the exit.
Of course. So now that we're on this topic of grocery shopping, the easiest and quickest and most efficient way to alleviate any problems associated with grocery shopping is either curbside pickup or delivery. I promise you, you will save money and you will save calories by doing this. Because if you go into the grocery store, and especially when you're hungry, and you start trying to shop, you will add more things than what's on your list. I promise you, and I speak from experience here. So curbside pickup, pay the extra this is again the one use of the dollar. Pay the extra 3% associated with the markup when it comes to curbside pickup, or the extra 5% when it comes to delivery. I think, to me, that's well worth it. If you shop at the grocery store once, twice a week, 100% curbside pickup, delivery.
I also, one thing that I notice is, like, for example, at Costco, if Mike and I go and we have a pre-conversation, because I tend to overbuy, but if we have a pre-conversation and he said we're not using a cart, we can buy what we can hold. Then I'm much more conscious of, like, okay, do I really need that pack of this, right? Because that's too big, I can't carry it. So I need to be more precise in my shopping. Same thing with, like, when you go to like HEB, you know how they have the big cart and then they have the small cart, and then of course they have the basket, right? So I, by habit, grab the big cart, even if on my list is relatively short. So you just grab the big cart and then you start filling in, and by the time you're like, wait, how did this happen? So yeah, a couple times that he's like, no, we're just going to use the small cart. Why are we using the big cart? I'm like, I don't know. It's just habit. It's just, I don't notice that.
And you want more space as well. And for sidebar here, for those who don't know what HEB is, it's the greatest grocery store man has ever made. So come to Texas.
Same thing with Buc-ee's. People don't know Buc-ee's.
Same thing with Buc-ee's. Yeah. Okay, so start with a large meal with leftovers. And what you'll do there is, when you're cooking that dinner, you'll then have extra leftover for potentially the next day, or maybe the next 2 days, for your lunch, maybe the family's lunch. So pack the kids' lunch if you want, pack your own lunch for work. So boom, you have a couple of meals right there that you don't have to worry about. And that's, I think, the first place to start. When we're talking about large meal cooking, always make sure to pick out your protein source first and build your meal around there. So if you decide Tuesday night we're going to have chicken, Wednesday night we're going to have fish, Thursday night we're going to have beef, start at that base, and then from there add your sides however you want. If you want, add some potatoes, add some rice, add some pasta, but build it around that base of protein to make sure that you always have enough protein for the next day. At any meal that you're eating, fresh, meal prepped, out and about, always want to have a source of protein. So start with that. When it comes to the next layer of meal prep, if you will, that's when you can start being a little bit prepared ahead of time. So let's say on Sunday, or let's say you go to the grocery store on Saturday, and Sunday's going to be your meal prep day. And I say this because this is the most common day that people will prep, given the fact that most people work Monday through Friday. And if you tell yourself you're going to meal prep Monday when you get home from work, you're putting yourself in a pickle that oftentimes you're setting yourself up to fail. So kind of put yourself up ahead of time to do that. And so Where it gets overwhelming for people on Sundays is, well, I don't want to spend 5-6 hours of my time meal prepping for the week because that's the time that I have to relax. And that's a very fair point. So when you're starting out, start out with easy recipes. Start out with easy recipes that can be replicable week to week to week. Right. So right now we're not focusing too much on taste. We're focusing on convenience. And ultimately you decide. If you want to have a little bit more of a tasty option, keep in mind that the creative recipes you'll find, you only, after 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks of doing this consistently, you'll start memorizing the dish. You'll start knowing, okay, for the 6 chicken breasts that I'm buying, I need to use a tablespoon of paprika, a tablespoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of salt. Like, you'll know the ingredients and the recipes just by trial and error. Just understand especially the first time you meal prep, it's going to take the longest. So put on some music, put on your smiley face, get your partner involved, and make a day out of it, or at least make it pleasurable more than anything. So pick your food, don't overdo it. Start with one meal. Say, okay, we're going to make lunch for Monday, Tuesday. Again, we're assuming that you are eating out every day for lunch, and your only meal that you cook is for dinner. So by doing 2 meals, let's say you're only eating 3 meals a day, that's 21 meals throughout the week. All right. And most of those meals for dinner, you're eating at home. So let's say 5 of those meals are at home. So you're already a quarter of home cooked meals. So now you're going to add in 2 or 3 more. All right, start slow. Just as I mentioned in our episode on progressive overload, when it comes to weight training, you're not going to go guns blazing right out the back, 7 days training of 2 hours each training session. You're going to burn yourself out. Same thing with meal prep. Decide on one specific meal that you're going to address for 2 to 3 times per week. Try that out. And as I mentioned, pick your protein source. I think the easiest thing that people will gravitate towards is chicken breast, because that's just, I don't know why, but it's the most common protein source that people think is the healthiest. I'm not saying it is. I think it's just the most basic staple, and it's the most variability that you can have with recipes. There's a lot of ways you can make chicken, and if you're in Texas, smoke your chicken. It's the best. I've been doing this ever since I got my smoker. I'm like, this is fantastic. So find your recipe for your chicken with convenience. What I always say is, try to do as much as you can while have multiple pots cooking. I mean this quite literally. So let's look at a time frame. Okay, so you're gonna pick a simple recipe and you're gonna bake your chicken. All right, turn on the oven, preheat the oven. Start assembling your ingredients for your chicken. Prepping your chicken should take no more than 5 minutes, 10 maybe. Just, again, we're not going complex recipes. We're going, put the chicken on the pan, put some oil on it, and you can even buy a pre-made mix, or just assemble your salt, pepper, garlic powder, chili powder, paprika, whatever you want. Mix it in, sprinkle it on the chicken, throw it in the oven. Typically, it's going to take 30 to 45 minutes, let's say. All right. While that's on, make your carbohydrate. Easiest thing to make is rice. If you have a rice cooker, I think it's the best thing to do. Buy a rice cooker, $15, $20 at Target. Put the rice on, water, rice, add some salt, put that going right after you start the chicken. All right, the rice is taking maybe 15, 20 minutes. That right there is done, right? That's done. So now in the meantime, you started your rice. Now you still have about 20, 30 more minutes until your chicken's done. Chop up some veggies, make a little bit of a salad, right? You can, and keep in mind with produce, only buy produce for 3 to 5 days. That's it. And if you're not willing to go to the grocery store for like the second part of the week, that's fine. We're just getting started. That's okay. Some starting point is better than no starting point. 3 to 5 days for your produce. Start either chopping up your salad and just putting it in containers, or make some stir-fried vegetables. I love stir-fried vegetables in terms of convenience. Chop up some onion, chop up some bell pepper, some mushrooms, throw it in the pot with some seasonings, have that going. That will take maybe 10, 15 minutes. All right. So by the time your veggies are done, your rice is done, and your chicken's done, right? Your chicken and rice could last you for 5 days. I would say don't push your chicken more than 5, but your rice, for sure, you can go 5 days. So now get your chicken out, and now you've spent an hour, and you have the option where you can chop up your chicken and weigh out your chicken, your rice, and your vegetables, and just prep them in those meal prep containers. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what those look like. Have 3 to 5 and prep them, and boom, you're done. And if you want to factor in time associated with washing dishes, that's maybe an extra 15 minutes. All in right here, we're talking about 2 hours. I promise you it's going to be less. But all in, we're talking about 2 hours. So that's it. You take your meals. You have, like I said, 3 to 5 meals maybe here, and you've just saved the $15 that you would spend at lunch, getting a burger, getting a burrito, getting a quesadilla. You've saved that money because I'm promising you all the pack of chicken breast is going to go for $12, $13. Divide that up by 5 meals. You're looking at $2, $3 per serving of chicken. Rice is very cheap. Vegetables, you don't need to buy organic. You can just buy regular vegetables, chop them up for your salad. You're looking at maybe 50 cents to $1 on each one, less than $4 for your meal. You've just saved your money. You've just saved time, because now when you're having lunch, you can have lunch on your own at your desk. You don't have to wait. You don't have to be rushed to drive to a place or however you want to do it. You've saved time, you've saved money, and now you're just eating healthier. Does that kind of give you a good semblance of where to start?
Yeah, I think I didn't realize it was going to be 2 hours. I've always imagined meal prepping to be a whole day event.
It could be.
Mm-hmm.
It very well could be if, and again, the first couple times you're just starting out, they are going to probably take longer as you're, and this is with any routine, anything that you change into your life, when you first start them out, they're going to take longer. And that's okay, because you're going to find what's the most efficient way to do it. But once you have it down, I'm all about maximizing. I'm all about maximizing my time. I don't want it to be where I'm just, if I put the chicken in and then go watch TV while the chicken's cooking, and then I have to come back to attend to the chicken and then cut it up in that time frame, it would have taken still 2 hours, but I actually, my actual time cooking would have the same been 2 hours, but it took 4 hours because in the meantime I was watching TV. Well, you see how when you go back to it, you're like, oh my God, I still need to cut this chicken. Right. And that then makes it feel like it's taking a lot longer, although you watch TV, as opposed to knocking it out and doing everything you can in those 2 hours. And but when you're done with your meal prep, you're done with your meal prep. Go watch your show, go do what you need to do, go exercise. You're done. So trying to make it as efficient as possible makes it so much easier and so much more sustainable to do. And you can add one more layer to this, right? I talked about making the chicken. Okay, well, when you're making the vegetables, if your chicken finishes and you're using the oven, all right, let's just say, assuming you're cooking the chicken, most of the time you'll have 2 layers on your oven. Well, when you cut your chicken, you can also cut some potatoes at the same time. Potatoes and chicken, learn about cooking times, because you'll realize, again, chicken, potatoes, they'll probably take the same time when you roast them in the oven. All right, boom, throw those in. So now your chicken and your potatoes are getting done at the same time. So now we have 2 sources of carbohydrates, right? So now we need to add, there's the balloons. I love this effect.
Celebration of the
I know, it's just like, I made it so easy. Now we need to have one more source of protein. Pick your source of protein. It could be yogurt. I love Greek yogurt as a snack. You saw me eat this multiple times, and I saw you eating it as well. Just frozen berries or just regular berries, throw in some yogurt there, and you can prep that ahead of time. Very, very easy breakfast option for me to make.
Right.
Prep that ahead of time. So now you have the yogurt there, and pick your other source of protein that you want to have. Let's just say you want to get a lean ground beef, and a recipe that I personally love all the time making is like a Korean ground beef stir fry, where I'll just stir fry. You can throw in some vegetables in there. Again, while the chicken and the potatoes and the rice are all cooking, you're whipping up this ground beef stir fry. You see how many like meals we're making here? And now we're getting to the point that you brought up, which I wanted to touch on, is the variability. So now when you have all of these options, you can mix and match. And this helps to alleviate I get sick of the same foods, because although you're eating the same foods, you're mixing and you're matching. So now maybe you typically have your chicken with your rice, but then the next day you'll have your chicken with your potatoes and your beef with your rice. Or maybe you have your ground beef stir fried mixed in with your rice, and it tastes like you have stir fried rice almost. So now you're combing and you're kind of mixing and matching your own things. And this last point I'll make when it comes to different foods, spices and seasonings and sauces, like sriracha, game changer. Sriracha is an absolute game changer for foods if you want to add some seasoning and spice to it. But you can make this. That's why initially, if you can make your rice or your potatoes as simple as possible, so that when you mix in your meat and your other sources, your vegetables, then you have the spices of one dish kind of enhancing the spices of the other dish. And now we're getting into cooking mechanics, but that way it changes the flavor, although you're eating the exact same food, right? You're eating the same rice, but you've added a different sauteed ground beef on there that has a different flavor than if you had the chicken with the rice.
So it sounds like you can start kind of regimented by following some simple recipes. And then once you get your timing down, then you can move into more like, okay, let me add maybe while I'm doing this, let's add another layer of different proteins or whatever. And then that would increase your very like your options down the week, because the boring feeling doesn't happen the first meal
Sure.
or two. It's by the Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday for sure it's pizza, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm done.
Sure. Sure.
So, but just human nature and stuff, I understand. But I think
No,
um
and I get that. And again, going back to one of the best ways to alleviate that is if you're meal prepping, you don't need to meal prep for every meal, right? You don't, if you're cooking dinner, and I still think this is one of the best things to do. And I know cooking every single meal is difficult, but if you're cooking only one meal a day, maybe you have help with your significant other, you have help with a kid that can help with getting your ingredients together, it makes it so much easier. So by dinner time, right, by Friday, like you said, Friday's pizza time. Well, it doesn't have to be, because your plan, if you're planning to cook dinner for 5 nights a week, well, then you have dinner covered. Breakfast, as I mentioned, very, very easy to just make your Greek yogurt overnight. And overnight oats, one of the easiest things to make and one of the most tastiest that you can do. Just putting your oats in, whether it's you can have put in oat milk and almond milk, regular milk, soak them, put them in yogurt, just soak them. And then literally when you wake up, you can just either grab them out of the fridge and eat them quickly, or take it to work and eat it at work. So now you have breakfast covered, you're making dinner, you're meal prepping, you have lunch covered. That's it. Like you have right there. And I'm not saying don't go out to eat. This isn't a sacrifice, be disciplined, like you have to hunker down. Of course, if you want to get to your weight goal faster and you're completely disciplined, I don't think it's a bad thing to be fully disciplined, but I think the key is moderation. And I know people say this all the time and people don't like it because it's like, oh, everyone says moderation, but it's true. There's a reason why it's repeated, because it's true. If you can sustain it, it will sustain you. That's the way I feel about a quote unquote diet. If you can find pleasure in it, find joy in it, it won't become a diet. It'll become a lifestyle that you will embrace and will actually enjoy. And then on the weekend, if you want to, if part of your routine is going date night Saturday, or taking the kids out for lunch or for dinner, there's nothing wrong with that. The beyond that is to start making healthy choices when you go out to eat. But if you're controlling for 10, 15 out of your 21 meals, you have a little bit more leniency when it comes to those 1 or 2 meals that you're out and about. And maybe you do want to have a couple slices of pizza or have a burger. Well, with nutrition, the biggest thing is people tend to focus on the blade of grass as opposed to the whole lawn, right? What
yeah.
really matters when it comes to nutrition is your day-to-day behaviors and the overall weekly cycle or the monthly cycle. It doesn't matter about that one meal on that one day, because if you eat extremely healthy and you have one quote unquote bad meal of a burger or pizza, it's not going to ruin your diet. And similarly, on the opposite end of that, if you eat burgers and pizza all the time and you eat out and you eat junk food and you have one salad, that's not going to make you completely healthy. It's the overall behaviors and it's the consistency on a day to day, week to week, month to month basis that will have the big picture. So if you want to look at it from a number standpoint, right? Let's say you have 3 meals a day and 30 days in a month. That's 90 meals, right? If you can aim for 75% of those meals to be healthy meals, 68 meals, 68 meals. Think about it that way. That means that you have 22 meals that theoretically you can kind of go a little bit more wild with. I don't encourage you to go crazy with them, but 22 meals, right? So 22 meals out of the month that you can have, that's more than one a week. That's more than 2 a week. So
Right. That
puts
counts
into
for like,
perspective.
social gatherings and whatnot, right? Because
Right.
obviously me and especially I like to hang out with friends and do those fun things. So I think I just never really put it together, right? Like I watched the videos for meal prepping, and all I focused was like, oh, that girl has pretty nails. You know, they do that. Well, I love that jar. Where can I buy the jar? Right. And then I end up buying the jar to do the
You're
overnight
missing the forest for
oats.
the trees.
Exactly. I buy the jar and I'm like, what did I buy these jars for? I
Then you put
forgot.
flowers in it. Your overnight oats jar.
Right.
It,
So it's good. It's good that we're having this conversation because I think my personality is that I tend to be all or nothing. Like I'm all
same,
in. Yeah.
same.
So I have to learn that, moderation. Like start with maybe just doing, even if it's just small, like let's just try 1 week of prepping them breakfast and see how that goes. And then
Yeah.
like, yeah, start small steps. Are there websites or sources of um good meal prep or even recipes that are easy
Yeah.
that you recommend that you have personally used that it's good?
I like it's called All Recipes. So it's ALL
Mhm.
recipes. I mean, they literally have everything. What I really
Yeah,
like about them is, again, we're not endorsed by them, but hey, All Recipes, if you're listening, just saying.
we're looking for sponsors.
I'm kidding. But what I like about them is you can on this, there's a search bar that you can search for a recipe or you can search for an ingredient. So let's say
Mm,
you want to have chicken. Again, I go back to chicken. You literally just type in the search bar chicken and it will give you plenty of options. Keep in mind, it will give you plenty of healthy options and it'll give you plenty of not so healthy options. You might get a fried chicken recipe on this website. So just keep all of that in mind when you're searching. But that's been kind of my go-to, or honestly, just Googling. Like Google is so smart now, and there's like
mm,
you can just type in chicken recipes in Google and you'll get a bunch of them. Like you and when it comes to how do you determine what's a healthy and what's a not healthy recipe, try to always find your food, avoid fried first and
mhm,
foremost. If you unless you're doing like an air fryer, I think the air fryer is a solid kitchen gadget to add to your home if you're going to start meal prepping. So speaking of kind of gadgets, air fryer, ovens, good pans and good pots and pans cannot beat the value of a good pot and a pan that where your eggs and stuff don't stick to the pot. So good equipment that you can have. And then when you're searching for recipes, try to get stuff that's baked, grilled, roasted, smoked. Anything that's not requiring your meat or your starch to be drenched in oil or
mm.
butters or avoid creams. Try to avoid things like casseroles because with casseroles you're going to have a mix of different things that will come in. But to answer your question, allrecipes.com, I like them as a good baseline. I think it's just a good place to start.
Mm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No.
then was another point that I wanted to bring up when you mentioned the social. There's two things I wanted to bring up: social gatherings and nutrient tracking when it comes to like macros. So social gatherings, the goal would be to not ever sacrifice social gatherings, because one of the biggest factors that we've seen in kind of in literature about like longevity is the people with the strongest communities tend to live the longest. So you can be spending all your time over here trying to hack your fitness, hack your health, but if you just lock yourself in a room and eat extremely healthy and train all the time, but you're lonely, like that will kick in. So keep that in mind that you don't want to sacrifice one thing for the other. I think social gatherings are very impactful. And that I personally used to struggle with it because you put me in an environment where there's like tempting food. I'm going to always go with that cheat meal mindset of I want to have this food. I want to have this pizza. I want to have this burger. Whereas now when I go out to eat, and I think you've seen, we've been to dinner multiple times, I tend to choose the healthier option, but it has nothing to do with, oh, I'm trying to be healthy. I've just truly found that the best flavors are in the healthier cuisines. And when I say healthier
Mm,
cuisines, I'm talking like I don't really eat much American cuisine, although I will every now and then. But I love the Asian, Indian, Mediterranean, the spices. I've learned to really love spices. And that to me enhances the quality of food and enhances the quality of healthy food, and it tastes a lot better. So do not sacrifice your social gatherings for because you want to have control over your food.
one thing that I want to share is that when I go to like a regular restaurant like Chili's or whatever, the most struggle I have when I look at the menu is like I even if I really feel like a salad, I feel bad ordering a salad because I'm like, why am I paying
Yep.
for someone to just throw vegetables in a bowl? I can do that myself at home for like so cheap.
I know my
So
wife is going to listen to what you're saying right now and laugh because for the longest time, I would critique why am I spending? Because this is how it goes. It's a $16 salad and it's an extra $6 to add protein.
Yeah.
All right. You want salmon? $6. You want chicken? $4. It just adds up. I fully agree with you. However, if you can get I still don't necessarily get salad. I think what we, like my wife and I tend to do, and here's kind of a good tip, is if you're going to go out to like a Chili's, for example, which not really crazy about Chili's, but if you're going to go out to like an American restaurant
That was
or
the
even,
only one that
I
came to
know,
mind. I don't know why.
we have Agas here in Houston, which we're going to go to soon. Like that's the one that came to my mind. But if you're going to go out to eat and you're going with your spouse or maybe some friends, get a salad and then get like your main dish that y'all can share together. That way you can get a little bit of both, right? If you're going to get a burger, don't each get a burger. Somebody gets a burger, somebody gets a salad, then you split half the salad, half the burger. And still you're getting a taste of, okay, the salad tasted really good, but you're also getting that burger, but you've just cut the calories in half compared to what you would have done if you each had ordered the burger. So I think it is frustrating in that sense, but then also when it comes to money, to me, one of the things that I said when I started making money and comfortable money was I want to spend my money on quality food. Right. So if I want to go out to eat and my wife is this way, if she wants a salad, okay, we'll get a salad and we'll get an entree because we have the means to be able to do that. Years ago, I wouldn't. Years ago, I didn't have the means to do it. Then a couple years ago, I was not going to spend the money on that. Whereas now it's okay. Well, die with zero. Life is short. Like we want to enjoy quality meals and quality food. So I think that that's a good use of money. And with that, there is a huge underlying element here that I know I haven't really addressed yet, which we will talk about at a different episode. We'll have an episode dedicated to just macronutrient breakdown, because while meal prepping is great, if you have no idea what your calorie needs are, you can be way off the bat, right? You could be like, I'm going to make chicken and I'm going to make potatoes and I'm going to have an ounce of chicken and a pound of potatoes because you don't know. You're not looking at your macronutrient breakdown. And obviously, I wanted to focus this episode on meal prep because it's in my opinion, this is just my belief. If you figure out your macronutrient breakdown and your calories that you need on a daily basis, but you don't know how to meal prep, well, you have all this knowledge, but you're not implementing it. Versus if you're a general American and eating generally like unhealthy foods, just switching that over to eating healthier meal prep options, even if you're eating more calories, you're going to overall, granted, keep in mind, calories in, calories out. But I guarantee you, if you're used to eating burgers and burritos for lunch and you go start eating a chicken salad and rice, you're going to get fuller faster eating your meal prep foods. And as a result, you're going to lose weight. So even though you have no idea what your macronutrient breakdown is, if you just go off of a visualization and you look at a plate and you go off the general My Plate guidelines, which says half of your plate should be vegetables, a quarter of your plate is protein, and the other quarter of your plate is a starch, I promise you, compared to what you were eating before, you will start losing weight. Simple as.
Yeah. I
But
think if you take a restaurant meal that you're provided, typically that's the wrong portion or the
sure,
wrong like
unless you're in
ratio.
Japan.
Right. Yeah.
That then you're like a little tiny thing. But you're right. And typically if you're going out to eat, chances are you would almost, what I've recommended to clients that, and actually a client gave me this idea years ago, when they would go out to a restaurant and they would go out to eat, they would order the meal and they would order it half in a to-go box and half on their plate. So they front loaded the temptation, because it's very difficult if you have a $22, let's say chicken dish or salmon dish or a burger. It's very difficult for them to just tell them, hey, just give me half. Right. So you got to know you're going to pay for it, but you're going out to eat already. But if you tell them, hey, can you just give me half of the portion on a plate and just pre-package, I'll still pay for the whole thing. Just pre-package it to go. Boom. You've alleviated the temptation. That especially works if you know you're going to have dessert. If you know, and nothing wrong with the temptation of wanting dessert after a meal. I know it's kind of conditioned into our culture to have a sweet after. If you know that, well, then limit your intake. Try to mainly focus on having a protein source at your meal. Like if you're if you know you're going to go get ice cream, or you know you're going to get a brownie at your favorite place, just get your protein and some vegetables for dinner. Then don't overindulge, but indulge. in your ice cream or whatever you're choosing for your sweet, because typically it's going to be a fat and a carbohydrate, and that way you'll eliminate the total caloric intake that you would if you just got a full dinner, because there's always room for dessert. I mean, let's be honest. If you eat half of the portion or the whole portion, there's always room for dessert.
Yeah, for sure. But that's good. That's a good trick and
Yeah.
tip to try. But like the definitely what you and Yesenia does, where I've seen a couple times where you order the salad and then you guys split an entree. Like Mike and I have been kind of starting with that too, because like it makes sense. It just makes sense that we can both get what we want, but without overeating. And then also it's just kind of going back to our Asian heritage or roots of more sharing a meal and family eating, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you just went to Japan, like there's a lot of the sharing style, right? You have, so you're not always just like eating that one portion all by yourself. So good tips. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and as I mean, there's a lot more that we can get into with when it comes to meal prep. I think that is what we discussed today was more first level meal prepping. I know it could become very overwhelming. There's a lot of you're completely right. There's a lot of clickbait out there when it's like 5-minute meal prep. It's like, all right, well, yeah, it took you 5 minutes to get the food assembled out of the fridge to even start your meal prep. Like no one shows the before, no one shows the after. So I know there's a lot of clickbait out there, and it can become overwhelming. And keep in mind when you're seeing a lot of these meal preppers, a lot of the food is staged, right? The way it, like, how many times I cannot tell you, I've tried to make a recipe and it looks nothing like the picture that I made, that I saw. That's okay. Like, keep that in mind as you're going along. It's not going to look the same. There's nothing wrong with you as a cook if it doesn't come out the exact same way. And a lot of it is trial and error. If you like more spice, you want less spice. It's something to just learn. It's a learned trait for sure. But I think there's just meal prepping in general is a good place to start. And as you're meal prepping, as you're starting to eat healthy, as I always mention, I try to mention throughout our shows, always combining that with some form of exercise, resistance training, because you're going to essentially double the effect of the nutrition changes that you're making by supplementing that with weight training, specifically weight training to start with, and then of course cardiovascular training. But those two pillars, I think, go hand in hand to just overall feeling better. And then keeping in mind, the more muscle mass you build, the more efficient your metabolic rate becomes. And you're able to, if you have more muscle, you can burn off more fat, and you can actually you'll be able to eat more calories. So think about it as a proportion of what you're consuming. So if you're a small, 67-year-old lady who's only eating 1,400 calories, right? If you get more muscle mass, and on your 1,400 calorie diet, you're eating 10% of your calories is coming from sweets. That's only 140 calories a day. But if you get some muscle mass on you, and then your basal metabolic rate goes up, and then your daily caloric intake becomes 1,600, well, now your 10% of that is 160. So now you're eating more. So the more muscle mass you can have on you, the more kind of caloric allowance you can have to play around with and have more foods. And just like on the finance side, I always mention this: a dollar is a dollar, right? So if I make $1,000,000 and the average lunch is $15, and someone else makes a $50,000, but the average lunch is still $15, $15 is going a lot further with my $1,000,000. I can buy a lot more of those $15 meals. The same thing with calories. If I have more muscle mass on me, I'm able to have a little bit more flexibility with my food, because my basal metabolic rate of what I'm able to burn and what I'm burning on a daily basis is a lot higher. And therefore I can afford to have a little bit more of those calories. And I've heard this analogy the other day and I loved it, because the whole caloric compared to your money, if you treat calories like you treat your budget, the more money you have, the more you can spend on leisure and fun things. The more muscle you have, the more you can burn it on certain calories that you like. I love that analogy. I just wanted to kind of leave with that.
That's like the first time I've heard it, but it's actually it probably resonates with me because I love money and
I figured you would, and I figured
like here
everyone
you
on
go. The
listening to this
ears are perked
podcast.
up now. I'm listening.
Yeah, you're like, now I'm going to the gym. Now you speak my language. Now I'm going to the gym. I think we could talk a little bit more about that.
Mike's gonna slip you a little tip afterwards. Be like, thank God you told her that.
No, and that's what I want this to be. I want this journey for everybody to just be fun, be enjoyable, be able to, again, the whole point isn't to sacrifice happiness, to eat foods you don't like, to hope to become healthier, to then become happier. right? But at the same time, we all know that certain foods and certain ways of life improve our overall well-being, improve the way we feel, and therefore will make us happier. So there's no denying that being physically active, sleeping well, eating well will make us feel better. Even if we're already at a baseline level of happiness, if you're doing none of those three things and you start doing those three things, you'll feel even better. Promise you that. So hopefully this meal prep episode is able to give you kind of some tips to help with incorporating meal prep into your weekly, your monthly, your yearly caloric intake, and give you kind of an idea. As I mentioned, we'll have another episode discussing macronutrient breakdowns so that you can get an idea of what you could be expecting to eat, obviously with the caveat that everyone is different, every individual person. So hey, thanks again for joining. I hope this helped. Thanks for kind of putting this into my mind, because to me it's become so normal that it's such a way of life that I don't even think about it until somebody else tells me like, hey, that's completely different.
Right. And it's just funny because, our friendship is relatively new, right? We've
Mm,
known each other for like over 2 years now, but just traveling together is new, and then seeing each other and seeing how, we're in our own environment. It was like, wow, eye-opening. And having this conversation now, I understand where you're coming from and the purpose of it, and it's just starting to make more sense, right? So I think having this, asking the questions helps, right? Because otherwise I'm just assuming you're
mhm,
doing it for a certain reason, which is
sure.
often wrong.
Well, and what's cool is that we'll be able to have and continue to have guests on that will be able to share their experiences, both again in the fitness and the finance world, that will share their what's worked for them and what hasn't worked for them, and what they're after. That's I mean, you're asking one person, right? I'm giving you my experience both from a clinical perspective but also from a personal perspective. But the diversity of opinion will allow somebody listening, various listeners, to hopefully resonate with certain aspects and say, hey, when that person spoke, I related more to that meal prepping or that eating behaviors than what Nino said or what Pei said. So I love that opportunity, and everyone's different, and the more people you can hear from, the better. So I think this is great. I love it. So, Pei, thanks again, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode. We'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
All right, see you next time.